Hello, friends, and welcome to Bible study. We are in the NIV in 2 Corinthians. We are going from chapter 12, verses 1 through 10 today. This one is called Paul's Vision and His Thorn. Chapter 12, verse 1. I must go on boasting, although there is nothing to be gained. I will go on to the visions and revelations from the Lord. I know a man in Christ who 14 years ago was caught up to the third heaven. We will go into that at the end. Whether it was in the body or out of the body, I do not know. God knows. We'll also go into what that means. And I know that this man, whether in the body or apart from the body, I do not know, but God knows, was caught up to paradise. He heard inexpressible things that man is not permitted to tell. I will boast about a man like that, but I will not boast about myself except about my weakness. Even if I should choose to boast, I would not be a fool, because I would not be speaking the truth. But I refrain so no one will think more of me than is warranted by what I do or say. To keep me from becoming conceited because of these surpassingly great revelations, there was given me a thorn in my flesh, a messenger of Satan to torment me. So, we're still going to cover most of the stuff that you're like, wait, what was that phrase you just said? Because that's what it did to me, and it put me on a whole research tangent. So I have more information to give here. But Paul is like, I know I have to talk about myself more, but can we really be focused on other things? Because I would really, really rather talk to you about this person who had this vision or this thing, and it's talking about third heaven, and that's way more interesting than talking about me. If you want to know about me, in order to keep myself from becoming conceited, God likes to regularly send me some sort of, demon or a tormentor. He has me harassed everywhere I go, so that I stay humble. Paul doesn't want to suffer from ego, so, and I can understand this, because, so I got a really bad temper, and it's really, really strong, and I spent a real long time working on that temper, making it so that I don't lose that. And most people refer to it as they're trying not to lose their temper, and that's because they want to sound like they're a grown-up. And I acknowledge that when I'm losing my temper, it is my inner 6-year-old, and she is having a temper tantrum. Because I know how to act better, and I'm not. I'm reacting from my least good nature. And anybody can get there at any point. 3 times I pleaded with the Lord to take it from me, but He said to me, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." Sometimes what we think is weakness is actually, and this comes from a song, it's not my own wording. Sometimes what we think is weakness is a canvas for God's strength. Sometimes we are afflicted with, say, something like a really terrible temper, just so that when we get it under control, by turning into God, we become an example for other people about how to control that affliction within oneself by turning to God. So, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Canvas, that it being a canvas for His strength, is from a Corey Ashburn song. So, therefore, I will boast all the more gladly about my weakness, so that Christ's power may rest on me. That is why, for Christ's sake, I delight in weakness, in insult, in hardships, in persecutions, in difficulties. For when I am weak, then I am strong. Which seems like very contradictory kind of things. So he's saying that as long as there is a demon, and he's basically saying that's exactly what it is, a messenger of Satan sent to torture me, whether that's internal, like mental, emotional, physical, and physical in the sense of another person who is less healed, so they're talking out of character at you, or if that is like a corporeal demon, which in the Old Testament there does seem to be some of that going on. It seems to be a lot more common. You could make a bunch of, it could be mental health issues and blah, blah, blah. You could get into a lot of, and I'm not saying any of that's not true. I can see that, any of that could be, because likely it's a combination. I'm not really for extremes. I'm really more for middle ground stuff that makes more sense to me. Middle ground always has. Now, with that being said, Paul would rather talk to you about this vision than these people have. And I am very fascinated by this because they said, what is this about third heaven? What's that? What's this about this? So third heaven. Third heaven is considered a location. Now, there are a bunch of different opinions on third heaven. So I'm going to give you a bunch of different opinions on third heaven. Because Judaism, Christianity, and Muslimism all have different opinions on what third heaven is. And then there is like the science overlap. I had a thing I was doing yesterday where I picked a card to try to say that my secret was that I'm an alchemist. And I'm like, that's not a secret. I'm employed in the sciences. I have degrees in technology. And I'm a minister. I see the science and the religion overlapped on top of each other. That is literally what an alchemist would have said if they were a scientist. Because you're thinking, if you're thinking alchemist is, if you're a person who does believe in science and you say Isaac Newton, guess what? He would have called himself an alchemist. Because it wasn't until after Sir Francis Bacon separated chemistry from alchemy that there was anything called science. That would be about the 1600s for reference. 15 to 1600s, depending upon what part of Sir Francis Bacon's life you want to get into. So before that, every early scientist was an alchemist. Why? Because they said so. They actually did believe the mysticism on top of the science itself. So that by definition makes them nice. Now the third heaven is a location between corruptibility and incorruptibility, containing the tree of life whereon the Lord rests when he goes to heaven. Traveling as angels do, i.e. astral projection. Angels are not physically corporeal bodies. Peoples. They don't exist in that capacity. If they did, we would refer to them as aliens. Just so you know, because they're not of Earth. They're from somewhere else. My opinion, I think they were from some other planet long ago, where their sun went supernova, and now they are just in their energy, i.e. soul form. Your soul is energy. That's how, and he's in your soul because God is energy. Now, so astral projection, this is what we're talking about. He's saying he doesn't know if this person physically went to third heaven, like he walked to a location bodily, or he projected his soul there. We call that astral projection these days. There's a lot of different words for it. The most commonly accepted term now is astral projection, just like generational karma. People want to argue about that. The Bible says we learn to people from our parents, and if our parents have terrible habits, they teach us their terrible habits, and those terrible habits keep getting passed on generation after generation, repeating the same terrible treatment of other people until we learn we shouldn't treat people that way or do that thing, or generational karma. Doesn't matter. Karma does have spiritual implications. Sure does. Very few things on this earth are an act of God because God does things that humans can't do. Most of the problems that we find ourselves in life are our own bad habits catching up with us. Karma is an idea that you reap what you sow. Now, it takes into account past life if you go into Buddhism and reincarnation, which certain sects of Christianity absolutely are saying absolutely that does not exist. And that's a matter of a belief system. And you can have whatever belief system that you like. I'm not trying to tell you that. The second book of Enoch, not Enoch, Enoch, because it's not English, so you don't just get to decide, is a person's name. Enoch calls third heaven a terrible place, describes it like it's purgatory. Now, there's also some actual set dimensions. 12 myriads by 12 myriads. 12 myriad miles by 12 myriad miles. Now, a myriad is from a unit of measure from the Jewish culture. It means a dozen. I know this very particularly because when I was married, it was to a Jewish man. We had a ketubah, and in there, he had to tell my father how many dozens of children he was going to give me. So I suddenly became very interested in what myriad knows. What does that mean? If you're going to be talking about me birthing, things like, wait a minute, that has the word children, and I don't know what this word means. And it means a dozen. So, or 100 in heaven, or the third, it's not really heaven, the third state of heaven, the third heaven, is 144 miles by 140 more miles, or it's a square if you're looking at the sacred geometry. Some people will argue that first and second heaven is the upper atmospheres of Earth, and third heaven is space, if you wanted to go down the alien route. And then there's also that this is like, because when Enoch is passing through, if you think of it like as a passage through, I've always referred to it as a gray world. It's not uncommon for people who astrally project to talk about going through a place that's very scary, where it looks like here, but in black and white, like it was black and white TV set. So it's gray world. And that is, that's what Enoch is describing as purgatory, where the people who want to come back into a physical body are waiting to try to get back into a physical body, but they can't get there yet. And if you pass through that location, you get into what is, I would refer to as ancestor land, which in Arcturian energy healing, they call the fourth dimension, but I can't call it the fourth dimension because I do science, and the fourth dimension in math is time. And 5 is energy, which is why to me, it's all 5D, and it's where the people go when they're waiting to be reincarnated. But again, it looks like here, think of it as like a town where people are still there, learning lessons and reviewing the tape and doing the things before they can get reincarnated and come back down into a body. Those are all just certain belief structures, and you'll absolutely find people who will argue up, down, and sideways that they can't possibly exist. And yet, repeatedly in the Bible, both in the Old Testament, because it is, in the hidden books, those of Enoch, and in the Gospel of the Apostle Paul, they're talking about layers of heaven and following the tree of life. If you get into Ezekiel's chariot, what you're talking about in the sacred geometry is the Merkabah star, which is supposed to be the vehicle of light that allows you to go visit God. It is indeed what Enoch used in order to ascend. Now, if you go back into Genesis and you're reading in Genesis, you will find the passage about Enoch, and it will tell you that he rose bodily to heaven and was able to come back and apparently still visit his wife to make more children while he went up and back to heaven until he becomes the archangel Metatron. Every Jewish person is a descendant of Enoch, because Abraham is a descendant of Enoch, because Noah is a descendant of Enoch, and every Jewish person is a descendant of Shem, who's a descendant of Enoch. Now, you should also know that the other people in the area, those related to Ham, and then Seth, right? Those are also the other sons of Noah, or from the Egyptians are descendants of Ham. Lot's children are a descendant of Ham, like Lot is a descendant of Ham. So you have to go investigating these things if you want to know more about them. Because I'm not telling you to adopt any one belief structure. I personally like to go investigate the belief structures and look for where the overlap is consistent. And what's consistent, most definitely, is a lot of people have a belief structure that say there's something beyond this 3D realm, and that our souls go there, and when our souls are there, we don't have a body to touch matter anymore. So, whether you believe in reincarnation or you believe that's just the place we go while we wait to go from our, particular death, use Catholic terms, our particular resurrection, our particular death for the individual soul, or the one where we're waiting in Revelations, where we're waiting for everyone else's soul to also get to this place before we can act like an interlocking puzzle piece and rise bodily to heaven, which you will also find things like that, flavors of that, in different starseed and other metaphysic beliefs. A lot of people who were particularly devout in the structure within the Catholic Church, which of course is our first and most consistent view of what at least the basis of Christianity is, also have belief systems about these things because it's in the Old Testament and because it's in here. Because remember, our view of what a Catholic priest even is supposed to look like looks an awful lot like the Apostle Paul, who would love to talk to you about third heaven rather than boast about himself. So may today bring you those wonderful little, what the heck is that? Let me dive down that research rabbit hole of what you can find to help you sort through this world and make you a better person along the way. Till next time, friends.